Hi, everyone. This is Randy Burton here, and episode 7 of Real Talk with Randy. Here we go. All right, today I've got a lot for you to unpack as I'm sharing my program that I've built and executed over the last 7, 8 months with regards to hiring entry level and or career pivoters into recruiting. I'm very excited about this program, so I love talking about it, and I just hope that sharing this model will help more recruiters get into the game because I know there's so many people out there right now trying to get into recruiting. Just kind of kick things off, right? As like compensation requirements for experienced talent acquisition folks have reached an all-time high. These tips, this program could be a very effective way to manage costs and create opportunity for your current team. Just basically, tying into just building a more loyal tribe around you. So let's start with the why. Why hire entry level instead of experienced, talent acquisition professionals, right? Experienced hires are expensive. And for the folks looking for top dollar, I mean, they're not likely to stick for the long haul. Entry level candidates and career pivoters really view this as an opportunity or like you're taking a chance on them, right? And if this program is executed correctly with a strong team-based culture, you'll have a long-term loyal employee for years to come. I hear it all the time, right? Like, I need somebody who's plug and play, right? But is that actually a reality? In my experience, everyone has to ramp up on new processes, build new relationships with their hiring managers, and get comfortable with the systems and tools, which typically takes at the very least 2 weeks. So is that really plug and play? Most of the time, those recruiters, however senior they may be, still take, about 2 months or so to really start delivering hires, right? So, what if I said that you could hire, an entry level person and have them contributing to hires in 2 months, for example, like sourcing, for other recruiters, and then delivering hires on their own in about 6 or 7 months? Like, that sounds like a pretty good deal, right? Not only is it possible, but I've noticed in going through this exercise of creating this program that our entry level hires have had amazing energy, motivation, and they just soak up all the knowledge. They really have injected, my team, my organization with just some fresh perspectives, some new energy, and it's gone a lot farther than I thought it would. So, how do you hire entry level? You might ask. It's different, right? And allow me to explain a little bit more, right? So, you're ready to hire an entry level, group of employees. First thing to consider is overhire, right? You can have the best program in the world and culture in the world, but since these folks you're hiring are newbies to the industry, you just can't expect them to stick, all of them anyway, right? The main thing is they just don't know what they don't know. And the first 6 weeks is going to be a complete grind, to be honest, right? I had one of my initial hires in this group that just decided that recruiting wasn't for them, which is okay, but it's something you have to consider before going on this journey, right? Secondly, and this is probably one of the most important things, is your current team has to have some bandwidth carved out to execute this program, right? So I'd say at least 25% of their time for about 3 months or so needs to be freed up, because each of these entry level hires will be paired up, with a mid to senior level recruiter on the team to help guide them through this journey. And I'll talk more about that later on in this conversation. Okay, so if you can check those two boxes above, right? Now you're ready to get started. And the approach that I took, like I had mentioned, works for entry level and career pivoters. This is your chance to generally hire people and genuinely hire people based off of your company values and intangibles, which is the fun part, right? So what I did first was I socialized with my team, my direct team, peer teams and all of that kind of stuff, that we were hiring for these folks in hopes that we would get a solid stream of referrals that were possibly known as friends or extended family, et cetera. Those are the types of candidates that are the lowest hanging fruit for sure. We offered referral bonuses to our employees, as well as created a compelling job description to attract inbound candidates. There was real no intention on actively sourcing or like headhunting these candidates. We wanted folks that were coming to us, that knew who we were and had some kind of like either value alignment or common connection to the company or someone within the company, right? So when I personally started this program, I was out to hire 3 entry-level employees, and our company values are be uncommon, family first, and culture wins. And we also operate in a very team sports, oriented type of philosophy, which is important to find, people that are kind of wired that way, right? Competitive, but, in the right way, if that makes sense. So we received about 20 to 30 candidates via referrals and inbound applicants after about a week. And what I did is I did resume reviews with the 3 recruiters that I had identified that these folks would be partnered up with through this journey. And we narrowed the list down to 5 candidates. With the interviews, the first interview was with me, about 30 minutes. And, I got into it, right? Like, the good, bad, and the really ugly sides of, recruiting in an attempt to just really put all the cards on the table, right? I wanted them to kind of know, like, what the super fun and fulfilling parts of this job was and what, the not so fun parts of the job are. We're talking about dealing with rejection and candidates being shifty and all those things, right? And then, during that conversation, I also made sure that we aligned on compensation. So as the next step, um, I asked the candidates after, actually during, that first conversation to really dig into our website, review our company values and be ready to speak about, the values and how and what they mean to them, without prompts, right? So that was kind of like a little bit of their preparation for the second interview. The second interview, I pulled in the recruiter I was planning to pair them up with, so the 3 of us could chat and evaluate. This round, we really drilled into what they perceived us to do based off of their review of our website, and then asked them to describe what our company values meant to them. I also ran them through, a handful of hypothetical scenarios that touched on organizational skills, ability to negotiate, ability to conquer fear or deal with rejection. Again, no right or wrong answer. Like, they don't know what they don't know. I just wanted to get a solid feel for like their instincts and really gauge like and be mindful around, their communication skills. Like, how did they deal with being challenged? Like, what was the tone of their communication? Did they ever go negative, or were they, always upbeat and positive, right? Um, so, interviewed those 5 candidates, bada bing, bada boom. Of the 5 we had, our 3 hires selected, offer out, signed, sealed, delivered. And I was also able to get them all to start on the same day, which turned out to be super helpful in the long run because they kind of created their own clique and supported each other and felt like they were in it together, as a team. Okay, so next up, like, okay, so now you've selected, your hires, right? Now what? So I'm going to provide you a high level overview of kind of how I structured this program week by week. And granted, there are some nuances here or there, but I think this is a good framework to kind of build off of. You know, keeping in mind that each and every of these hires is going to be paired up individually, with a mid or senior level recruiter, somebody who knows what they're doing, right? So week 1, first day, first week, right? This is where the new hires spend, time getting their laptop set up, making sure their access to their systems are all tuned in, and reviewing any written documentation, that you have, kind of that self-guided learning types of things. We had a handful of documents that covered our best practices internally, so we had them review that, as well as an introduction to the recruiter that they were going to be aligned to. And just, a little bit more, just making sure that they were connected to their recruiter and understood the cadences of meetings and, how we operate, during our team calls and those types of things, right? So just kind of, getting settled for week 1. Week 2 is what I call the calibration week, right? This is where they get introduced to the profiles that they'll be targeting, huddling up with their recruiters to help them build out their search strings and messaging framework. By the end of week 2, they should have created projects in LinkedIn or, have lists in some other form of, spreadsheet or whatnot, of the pipelines, the candidates that they've identified as potential candidates. Then their recruiter that they're paired up with will review with them, this pipeline, and okay, give the thumbs up on who to reach out to and who not, and kind of have that action around, why not this candidate, why this candidate, ensure that they just understand the nuances of how to make the determination from, a sourcing perspective, reviewing profiles on, what makes a good profile and what doesn't, and what are the edge cases, right? That's probably one of the most important parts of this whole calibration week, is just ensuring that there's, meaningful discussions going around the profiles and whatnot. The recruiter should be able to really articulate, why or why not the candidate should, qualify or be okayed for outreach, right? Can't just be yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. There's got to be the why, Otherwise, you're going to be off on the wrong foot with these folks. All right, so that's week 2, calibration week. Weeks 3 to 6-ish, this is where the magic starts happening, where, they're sourcing and messaging candidates along with shadowing their recruiters on initial phone screens. The new hires should be sending at least 75 personalized messages per week to candidates approved by their recruiter. The recruiter should also have at least 3 one-on-one sessions per week with the new hire to maintain calibration and discuss any edge cases that I referred to. So it's really super high touch, right? I mean, since the sourcer will be shadowing calls for all their source candidates, it's critically important to make sure the recruiter does a solid debrief on each candidate to reinforce the calibration, right? So, you spend about 3, 4 weeks there, right? Get their reps in as far as shadowing the recruiter's calls, getting a feel for their style, what kind of information needs to be captured, what are you listening for, from the candidates, that kind of stuff. And then we're about midway there, right? So week 6 to 12, during this cycle is the time where the sourcer gradually starts to participate more in actually talking, during these initial phone screens, while the recruiter is shadowing them and giving them feedback to help hone in. Again, still having debriefs on yes or no and why. But before the sourcer moves into the next step, they should have completed about 50 phone screens on their own from start to finish and be able to demonstrate making proper decisions on who to move forward with and who not and why, right? So that brings you to kind of the home stretch, like week 13 and beyond. Like, here's where it gets a little bit tricky, because some folks grasp things a little faster than others. So timelines could vary by a few weeks here or there. Assuming they've checked the boxes above, it's now time to have the sourcer start to prepare candidates for submitting, the candidate summaries, the resumes, that kind of stuff, right? And the recruiter can start dialing back how much time they spend with the sourcers. During this time frame, I advise my recruiters to meet with the sourcers on like Tuesdays and Thursdays. So just a couple of quick checkpoints, 10, 15 minutes, but also make themselves available to, review some random questions or, some of those edge case candidates where it's not super clear on whether they're like really strong or not, right? So after they've kind of really progressed through that and still during this, week 13 and beyond phase, right? I said, talked about it being a little tricky or whatnot, but it's time to start introducing them to the candidate interview prep conversations, the interview debrief conversations, with candidates and hiring managers. Start introducing them to your pre-closing techniques, closing and onboarding, all of those things. This is done again by having them shadow at least 50 calls with their recruiters or even with other recruiters on the team so that they can start to get a feel for different styles across each of those areas, while also leveraging the knowledge that they're gaining in gradual increments with their own candidates that they're progressing through the process. So there you have it. After about 6 months or so, it's time to graduate them into full-fledged recruiters. I say, and what I did, like, make a big deal about it, right? I mean, it's fulfilling for these entry levels. Like, they've achieved something, they're graduating, and that feels really good. It's a really good milestone for the recruiters that were, partnered with these people on this journey, because they get the fulfillment of like helping navigate someone into the industry and seeing them have success and being there for when they're not. It's just one of those things that deserves making a big deal out of. It went a long way with us, right? So, this is a little bit of my secret sauce, like I said, kind of high level, but I can tell you, like, it's worked. It's almost doubled like the output of my team by doing this. Although we did see a slight dip of output within that first like 2-3 week period, because it is somewhat intensive to get them calibrated, right? So, that's kind of my secret sauce for ramping up entry level hires into recruiters. And there are so many reasons why it's a good concept, right? Number one, you have loyal new hires that will stick with you for the long run. You've given your recruiters, existing on the team, a little taste of what leadership and management looks like and feels like, which is probably a growth opportunity for them, which also keeps them challenged and growing and, resulting again in more loyalty, right? And you built out your own recruiters, and you have a sustainable model to do this going forward. So super cool, right? Well, how would you like to hear from a fellow that just completed this program? So I'm going to pull in newly minted recruiter Sam Wellman. There he is.
Hey,
Hey,
how's it going?
all right, so thanks for joining me here on episode 7 of Real Talk with Randy. I just shared all my secret sauce about this Sorcerer program, and so I wanted to kind of pull you in and have you kind of talk a little bit about how that experience was for you, now that you're kind of freshly minted, as a recruiter.
Yeah, definitely. No, it was a really, really cool experience. I think, right off the bat, having a mentor to work with just through all the processes and learning how the company works was super helpful. And on top of that, having exposure to not only your mentor, but all the recruiters, within Averro and seeing their styles was super helpful because, I know a lot of times it's people want a one size fits all approach, whereas I feel like utilize your strengths and your personality and work it that way because there isn't really a one size fits all to sourcing or recruiting. So that was really refreshing to see just from the start, all the exposure I got. But yeah, it was really awesome experience.
Super cool. Yeah. And I know, it was a grind early on, you stuck with it, and now here you are. Just super proud of you and, your ability to just partner with your recruiter and, kind of get into our environment. Like, I think you've definitely got a bright future ahead.
Awesome.
So
Yeah.
I
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
your comments. Glad that you had a good experience. I mean, I kind of already knew it, but I'm sharing it with the audience here, right?
Absolutely.
Um, and then, yeah, just to kind of wrap up the episode again, like, a lot of this framework or foundation or whatever you want to call it is pretty high level stuff. And, if you're curious to learn more about the nitty gritty details, I'm happy to connect for one-on-one conversations. If anyone out there in the audience likes this program, but just would struggle to carve out an opportunity or the appropriate bandwidth from your team for this ramp up cycle, let's chat. I've got some creative ideas on how I might be able to help you cover that gap there. So again, Real Talk with Randy, episode 7. Thank you all. And that's a wrap.